before I went to conference, because I knew I wasn't going to get home last night and be able to prepare a Sunday lesson. And I almost, after the conference, it was kind of like a feeling that it just kind of flew out the window, because there was just so much love at the conference. And so rather than sticking solely to the Sunday lesson that I prepared, I just am going to speak to you from the heart this morning and just share with you some of my feelings about love. But before I do that, I'd like to give you a couple of quotes that I looked up this morning from Ernest Holmes. And one of them is from Can We Talk to God? If we make ourselves receptive to the idea of love, we become lovable. To the degree that we embody love, we are love. This is why people who love are loved. It does not pay to hate. Hate is a human idea. Love is divine, verified. And then from the Science of Mind text, it says, but the great love of the universe must be one with the great law of its own being, and we approach love through the law. This then is the teaching, love and law. As the love of God is perfect, so the law of God also is perfect. We must understand both. When I prepared my Sunday lesson originally, I was reminded of a movie called Marvin's Room. Does anybody remember Marvin's Room from the 1990s? It starred Meryl Streep and Diane Keaton. And the wonderful thing about it was Diane Keaton played a sister who had really stayed at home to take care of her mother, or her father rather, and her aunt. And she'd spent 20 years being the caregiver to these two individuals. And at one point it was then discovered that Diane Keaton, who plays Bessie in the movie, had leukemia. And all of a sudden, appearing on the scene is Meryl Streep as Lee. And she comes in, she's been the estranged sister for a very long time, and she hasn't really had anything to do with her aunt or with her father. And they're talking about the fact that Diane Keaton has leukemia. And she says at some point, I've been lucky to have had so much love in my life. And Meryl Streep looks at her and said, well, sure, you were lucky to be loved by the aunt and our dad. And Diane Keaton looks at her sister, Meryl Streep, with a little bit of a shock. And she says, no, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, I was lucky to have had so much love to give to others. Kind of a reversal. And if we're fully in God's love, if we know that there is no separation between ourselves and spirit, then the love just absolutely overflows out to others. We all still experience that because of Reverend Louis. In Romans, which was one of the scriptures that I was going to read this morning, they talk about how love has to be genuine. And what genuine means is living without hypocrisy. And the word hypocrisy actually was created when we had years and eons ago when actors would play a role that they were not actually in, or that they were not actually who they were. And so they played the role without hypocrisy, knowing that they were playing somebody else. And of course, through years, that's kind of changed a little bit. And we know that when somebody is being hypocritical, we know when they're saying, oh, I love you, and they really don't. And we know when it's contrary to the actual feelings. And so as Science of Mind individuals, we're called to love without hypocrisy. I know, too, that love must be discerning. That means we have to make wise choices. And we have to know what is right and what is wrong. And I think in this day and age that love, or that our world has become very black and white, or a lot of shades of gray, rather. And as I was preparing this lesson, I was reminded of a speech I had heard one time of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. And someone raised a hand and said, "Tell me, how do you deal with all the criticism, all the anger, all the hate when you make a decision sitting on the Supreme Court?" And his response to that was, "Well, first I have to decide what is important. And I have to discover what I believe to be true. I have to understand what I believe to be true. And then I have to stand up for those beliefs. And because I know that that's what's true for me, I know what's right, and what other people think is unimportant to me." And so we're called in love with discernment. All of us know the town of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. And well, of course, we've all heard that it's the town of brotherly love. But did you realize that it came from two Greek words, philos and adelphos? Now, philos means to be tender and loving and affectionate. And adelphos means brothers born of the same womb. And we, in our spiritual belief, believe that we are one with each other, as well as one with the divine. We are born of the same womb. And we, as brothers and sisters, support each other. And a few years ago, when I was the minister in Oroville, it was a very, very rainy day. It was literally raining cats and dogs almost. I mean, it was pouring buckets. And I had left church late, and I went into a Taco Bell just to grab a quick bite to eat, and there was nobody else in the restaurant. Then as I got up to leave, there was a man who was soaked to the skin with short sleeves on. And it was obvious that he was a homeless man. And he was trying to convince the manager to give him some food. And the manager, of course, would not release or give him any food at all. And so he went a little bit dejected back out into the parking lot, and I followed him out the door, and I yelled at him. I said, "Are you hungry?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And I said, "Come back in and I'll buy you something." And so we came back in, and as we were standing there, I looked up and I pointed up the menu, and I said, "You can have any combination that you want to. Any combination on the menu." Now, he could have ordered the biggest meal that they had, but he ordered the cheapest and what I would classify the smallest. 3 simple 99-cent tacos and a soda, a large soda. And the manager looked at me a little bit apprehensively, and I waved her off and said it was okay, and I paid for the meal. And when he ordered it, he said it was to go. And I was really surprised. And as we walked to the door, I said, "Are you sure you don't want to stay inside here where it's warm and it's dry so that you can get dry?" And he looked at me and he said, "No, I have to get back to my friend to share this meal with my friend." I learned that day what Philadelphia really meant. I knew that day what brotherly love really was all about. Here was a homeless man going back to a sick friend to share a meal with his friend. 3 tacos and a large Pepsi. Love tells us that we must be enthusiastic. John Stott, notes that religious enthusiasm is often derided as nothing but excessive emotionalism and a sign of fanaticism. Now, I don't know if you were at the Super Bowl party I was, but there were a lot of fanatics there. We had a lot of fun that day. But we can accept that in a sports fan. We can accept that in somebody who's a fanatic about education or about their job. But we have a hard time accepting fanaticism when it comes through religion or spirituality. I'm reminded of a communist one time who was speaking to a Christian, and he said to them, "If I truly believed what you believe, then I would be willing to crawl through broken glass to bring others that message." What an incredible thought. What an incredible idea. How many of us would be willing to crawl through broken glass to bring a message of love, a message of spirit to others? Love has to be generous. And what I didn't know until I was researching this was that the word koinonia, and I went to a Disciples of Christ church as a child growing up, and almost every first Christian church, I think, in America has a koinonia hall. And I had never knew what koinonia meant. And all of a sudden I discovered what that was when I was preparing this lesson. And koinonia means to share with others. What a beautiful thing. Sharing with others, just like that man who decided that he was going to share his tacos with just 3 tacos. That was the only thing they had to eat. It touches my heart. But koinonia means to share with others. And so what are you doing to meet the needs of others, not only in your life, but in our community? There's a team that goes out and feeds people. Carol's in charge of that help to feed the folks at Salvation Army once a month. They're sharing with others. We have that opportunity by contributing to Clink the Can, to share with others. I was reminded one day also of love when I was at the police station. I'm a police chaplain like Carolyn, and I was at the police station. And I came out after a meeting, and here was a dog and a bicycle and kind of a basket of some shape or form overflowing with cans and clothes, and it was obviously something that belonged to a homeless individual. And so I went inside the dispatch and I said, "Do you guys know that there's a dog tied up outside?" And explain. They said, "Oh, that's John's." I don't remember what his name was, but "Oh, that's John's. He's looking for a bungee cord." And I said, "Really?" So I came back out, and as I came back out, here came this man towards me with very dirty dreadlocks and dirty clothes, and I could smell him basically before I almost saw him. He was kind of like that, So as he came towards me, I said, "I understand you need a bungee cord." And he said, "Yes." And I reached in the back of my truck and pulled out a bungee cord and handed it to him. And he was just absolutely elated that I would have a bungee cord for him. And he said, "I have to thank you." And he reached out to hug me. And of course, I'm not. And he said, "That's the only thing I have to give you is a hug. The only thing I have to give you for a bungee cord is a hug." He was expressing his gratitude and his love for something so simple as a 99-cent bungee cord. And my guess is that he probably hadn't been able to hug anybody, or nobody had hugged him, for a long time to come, or for a long time to be. This last week I just felt so much love that was shown to Michael and myself. And I was just ever so grateful, especially for Michael, that he had the opportunity to just be, as he calls it, loved up. He was all loved up. And one of the things that I was reminded by that was the fact that we lived in harmony with everybody that was there. And harmony doesn't often happen. And all we have to do is look at the last election to realize that we don't live in harmony. But, and if we all believed the same exact thing, what a boring life it would be. But when I think of harmony, I think of a beautiful symphony or a barbershop quartet, 4 voices coming together, 4 different notes, and yet they come together as one. I was reminded of this too when I watched on television a few years ago the funeral or the memorial for Ted Kennedy. And one of his sons got up and said, "My dad taught me a lot of things." He said he even taught me that the Republicans love this country as much as the Democrats do. And what I've come to understand is that all religions, all spiritualities, love as much as we do. It's just now is our chance and our opportunity to show it a little bit more. So how can you come to that space and that place where you show love a lot more than what you already do? Well, I like to go back to some of the passages within the Science of Mind text, or any of Holmes' writings, Joel Goldsmith, Butterworth. Any of those have incredible books and incredible messages on love. The second thing that I do, and I hope that you do also, is I affirm in my prayer that power of love that lives within all of us. And I ask to be more loving today than I was yesterday. I also sometimes pick 1 or 2 areas that I need to grow in that love, because it's not always easy to be forgiving. It's not always easy to let go of the past. It's not always easy to forgive and to go to that place of love. And one of my favorite things that I do is when I'm in a place where I'm angry with someone or I'm frustrated and I feel like I just can't bring that love to this situation, is I either raise and praise them or I sing the God song. And of course it's very simple. I praise you, I raise you in the name of love. And you can put the person's name in there. Or I sing the God song, God's the love that I am. And then I put the person's name in there. John's the love that I am, or Mary's the love that I am. And I keep repeating that. I do that when somebody cuts me off on the freeway, when I'm angry at somebody standing in line, even if I don't know them. God's the love that I am. God's the love that I am. But what it allows me to do is to come back to that place of centeredness deep within, to come back to my heart, to come back to that place where God wants me to be, and to love unconditionally, to love others. One of the things that I discovered recently was also an article that was what people wanted in a church, what they wanted when they came. And the 2 greatest qualities that they wanted was a caring church and a loving church. They wanted to be associated. It wasn't about the doctrine. It wasn't about what the church spoke about and preached about, taught. It was they wanted to be loved, and they wanted to know that others cared about them. I think that that's what we've created here, that Michael and Louie started, was a caring and a loving church. Because people want to truly be loved, and loved deeply. And so I would just ask each and every one of you this week to look at yourselves and say, how can I love a little bit more deeply? How can I open my heart up and receive the love of the divine that lives within each and every one of us? This is the truth in my life, and this is the truth in yours. And so it is. Would the ushers please come forward?